Hi parents, today I'm going to talk to you all about a game called Spill 10 Beans. In our classroom, we call it Spill 10 Beans because we use a math tool we have in there that looks like little beans. But in your house, you can call it Spill 10 Pennies or something like that. For this game, you're going to need 1 cup that you don't mind your student playing with. You will need 1 bowl or you're gonna want to do it in a bowl or like a plate or something like that. And you will also need 10 pennies. And now, before you get started, go ahead and talk with your student about the difference between heads, where you can see the head on the penny, and tails, where you see the building. Now, any kind of tool that you have lying around the house that has 2 distinct faces like this will work. I just couldn't think of anything besides coins, and obviously we all have gazillions of pennies. So here's the head. You can see the head. And here's the tail of the penny with the building on it, okay? So now that we've reviewed the difference between heads and tails, what we're going to do is put all of our pennies inside the cup. And in order to spill out the pennies, we need to shake them up. So students in my class know that we do shaking like this. We put our hand firmly over the top of the cup and we shake it 3 times, not more, not less. 1, 2, 3. And then what we do is we're going to take our bowl, and again, I will tilt you down so you can see a little better, and you're just going to spill all of your pennies into the bowl, and then you're going to spread them out a little bit, and you're going to make 2 piles. One for pennies who come up tail side. I forgot to say that some pennies buildings look a little different on the tail side. One for the tail side and one for pennies that landed heads up. So you're going to separate them into 2 piles. So tails, 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 heads, heads, tails, tails, tails. And then you're going to go ahead and count. How many pennies came up heads? For me, it's just 3. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to take a piece of scratch paper that I have right here. I got it from the recycle, so it has a few splotches on it. And here is where you have a couple of options, okay? So if you and your student are working on writing equations, then it would be good practice to have them write an equation to show their findings using the addition format. So you would want them to write, remember they're doing their best kindergarten spelling, but it looks like I had, well, can't really see. It looks like I had 3 heads and 7 tails. So it would be appropriate for students to write 3 heads plus 7 tails equals, and how many does that equal altogether? I'm going to count on. So I know that I have 7 tails, so I'm going to hold the number 7 in my head. 7. And then I'm just going to count these 3. So 7 comes next. 8, 9, 10. I have 10 pennies all together. So I'm going to write that in my equation. 3 heads plus 7 tails equals 10 pennies. And I'm going to show you what I wrote right here. And I'm going to read it to you. So 3 heads plus 7 tails equals 10 pennies. And you can do the same thing. I'm going to do one more round like this, and then I will tell you some modifications that you can do to change up the game for you and your student. So once you've recorded your round, I'm going to slide the pennies back in here, put my hand over the top, count with me. 1, 2, 3. Dump them all out. Spread them a little bit. Make sure to get all my heads together, sort them, and all my tails together this time. Looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads and 1, 2, 3, 4 tails. So I'm going to go ahead and write that equation. I have 6 heads plus 4 tails equals, how many pennies does that equal altogether? Will you count with me if you're watching with your student? We need to hold the bigger number in our heads. So this 6, there's more here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's how we count the fast way, to find out that we have 10 pennies all together. I'm going to finish writing my equation. Okay, so some variations you can do on this game are to, when you're having your student record, you can have them record either just by writing the numeral for how many heads they get. You can have them record by filling in dots on a tens frame that you drew. So I'll give a little example of that. If you draw them a tens frame that looks like this, you would have them fill in 4 dots to show that they got 4 pennies. And you would have them write the numeral 4 underneath. That is an awesome way to record their findings. And if that's more appropriate and writing the equation doesn't work, then stick to that, okay? You can also add more pennies in here. You can go all the way up to 20 and have your student practice recording those equations. They could also record their findings on what's called a double tens frame, which basically looks exactly like 2 tens frames next to each other. So I would just, how can I do this? I can just squeeze another one in there. Basically, you would have 2 tens frames next to each other and they could fill in with the dots and the numeral. So your student might be ready to write equations 10 and under, but if you're going all the way up to 20, you might have to move to having them fill in the tens frames first, and that's totally fine. That is the way, that makes this game a growing game, and they can play it multiple times in its multiple different ways. If you find something to use besides pennies, please let me know, because I'd love to share that resource with families. If you decide that you want to do something like put in pennies and nickels or something like that, just make sure that you're changing up the number every time so they're not always getting the same equation of like 4 nickels plus 6 pennies. Heads and tails works well because they can flip back and forth. Thank you for watching how we play Spill 10 Beans or Spill 10 Pennies at home. I'm going to give you, before I go, I'm going to do one more spill. And if you're watching at home, I want you to record the equation that matches what I spilled, okay? So count with me. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to dump them into my bowl. Going to move the camera so everyone can see. Ooh. There we go. I'm going to separate. I've got heads, heads, tails, 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 heads, tails, 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 heads. Okay. So here are my heads. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here are my tails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's up to you to record how many heads, how many tails, and how many pennies all together. And you can send me a picture of your recording to let me know. Bye everyone. Enjoy Spill 10 Beans.